My name is Carroll George. My maximum rank was ensign in the Coast Guard. But I would first like to say how I got into the Coast Guard Academy because it was so different from everyone else's. I took the competitive exam 4 times while I was in the age bracket to do so. And I flunked the physical 3 times. The 3rd time it was hearing. I got into the academy. After flunking the hearing test the 4th time, I became a Navy midshipman reserve unit as a graduate of a junior college, and I had a voyage to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba for a little 14-inch gun practice, and I came back to New York and went in to have the 4th examination for the Coast Guard Academy. And I was in line for the hearing test that I had flunked the year before. And the Coast Guard officer come up to me and said, "Mr. George, how are you doing?" I said, "One more hurdle, sir." And he said, "Come into this side office here. Let's see what we can do about it." That was the Commandant of Cadets of the United States Coast Guard Academy, who had come down to New York City with the Academy doctor to make sure that I got into the Coast Guard Academy on my 4th try. And I did get in. So then, during my 1st year, we had Pearl Harbor. And on the 12th of December, they graduated the senior class. And my class was the first class that went around the calendar to the academy for 3 years, and I graduated in 1944 in the class of 1945. And found my way to the USS Taney, which was a queen ship of the Coast Guard at that time, 327-foot cutter. And I did convoy duty to North Africa and heard a few depth charges, but we did not bring anybody up. And then we were made into an AGC, which in preparation for the Battle of Okinawa. And I was at the Battle of Okinawa on April 2 days before April the 1st, the opening of the battle. I got a letter from my wife that said our firstborn would be by surgical operation instead of natural birth. The day before I got the letter, I did not get another letter about that operation for 3 solid weeks of the Battle of Okinawa. But fortunately, I was in the safest possible place you could possibly be at Okinawa, aboard that AGC with the Navy Admiral aboard and his staff of communicators that kept us well informed as to how everything was going all over the place. On May the 5th, 1945, when the Allies were about to accept the surrender of the Germans. The Japanese decided they wanted to do an all-out at Okinawa. And they sent in 131 kamikazes in one 24-hour period, in which they sunk 17 of the total ships sunk by kamikazes. There were 34 total in the war, and they did 17 on that day and damaged many others. In fact, they damaged 298 altogether before the atom bomb stopped their operation. And outside of that, being an engineering officer, I was on duty one day when we had all night at general quarters, and we went up to a tanker to get fuel, and there I found out that they were filling us too fast. They were giving us too much pressure, and I told them to turn the pressure down and cut it in half from 120 to 60, and then again to 30. And then before I could get them to stop it, there was a fountain of that old oil down in the crew's quarters. So, being the engineering officer aboard at the time, I had to go over on the tanker and find out what was the matter. And I found out that there was two things that were the matter with both our ship and theirs. But their ship had, I asked the fellow, I said, what did you do when I said reduce it from 120 to 60? He said, we turned this big valve halfway off. It was a big gate valve. 12-inch gate valve on a 6-inch line. Half off, it had no effect whatsoever on the pressure. Then up, down to 60 and to 30, nothing. So that was obviously the problem. The gate valve was on the wrong side of the valve. It was always measuring the pressure in the tank, not the pressure on the line. So I reported back. I was glad to be able to report it back, because that got the engineering crew and the Coast Guard, who had foiled up the Navy enlisted quarters with that old black oil. So the admiral told the guy over in the tanker what had happened, and better get his valve on the right side of the valve. I mean, get his gauge on the right side of the valve. But outside of that, put down a lot of smoke screens whenever there was a... But I did see one kamikaze hit a ship, and the flames dart up way about 3 times as high as the ship. It didn't sink, and they got a lot of people off of it. And unfortunately, my ship participated with others in bringing down one American airplane that didn't have his identification going. But those things do happen. I had 2 other assignments. I got on transport, and I brought 2,000 of our Army and Marines home, 200 at a time, 3 times, 2 trips from the Mediterranean and 1 from Manila. And then I got on a weather ship, and I was in the Coast Guard yard, and they didn't know whether they were going to give it an appointment or whether they're going to put it in mothballs. So but my wife was in the home port, which was Boston, expecting in 2.5 months. So I had no other choice but to go ashore and get a civilian job, which I did get before lunch. I signed up with the Western Electric Company to be a research and development mechanical design engineer before lunch, and I went with a member of the department I was going to be in out to where he lived. I rented an apartment got my wife moved within 2 weeks with a built-in ride to work with the guy that had taken me to where I found the apartment. So that was the length of my military career. I selected the Coast Guard for my military service because its primary mission was looking out for others. And believe me, that is a wonderful, wonderful way to work.